Frontline Gaming presents 40K Stat Center with your hosts Val Heffelfinger and the Falcon.
Battlefield Birmingham stays medieval in trying times, recording results on postcards and tabulating scores with an abacus.
And then we bash back over brass tacks to get you the results from the Berry Bash.
Then we rush right over to the Rumble at Rumford.
The Scots held another secret event. Maryland does what Maryland do. This is probably the last one for a while.
My friends, this is Stat Center. All right, Pete, here we go. I guess we've got one last show teed up here, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, the end has come, at least for a while.
Yeah.
If you folks have been hiding under rocks or have been in some kind of remote cabin in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere, bit of a virus going on. Most places have told everyone to shelter in place or have cut meetings down to 10 or less people. Mm-hmm. So it's very unlikely we're going to see a lot of GTs and majors in the next coming weeks, maybe months. I
think more to the point, and I'm not going to lump you in with me, Pete, but I think if there are GTs either this week or in future weeks, I don't feel comfortable covering them at this point, and so I think it's time that we try and give it our best on this show. Talk up the last. We got 5 events from last weekend. Again, probably still a little long in the tooth to be running events even last weekend, but we're gonna cover them, and we'll then go into some social distancing for Stat Center for the foreseeable future.
No, for sure. And I agree 100%. You and I talked about this over the last, probably 2 or 3 weeks now, that I don't want people to be going to events at this kind of troubling time. It's something we shouldn't be doing, and it's something we shouldn't be promoting either. We do have people that message us, sometimes tongue-in-cheek, but other times I'm not quite sure, saying that they're going to these events because they want to get on Stat Center or they want to get some kind of recognition. They want their ITC points. And I don't want to be any extra incentive for someone to possibly get ill or give this illness to someone else. Yeah.
And, we're part of the Frontline Gaming Network, which is awesome and has been an honor thus far and will continue to be an honor for us. I think I'm going to use this position too to suggest that the time is long come and gone, that the ITC should suspend awarding points to tournaments. I think this is not a political statement, guys. Viruses do not vote. They do not have stances. It is time to not fuck around anymore. So I would highly recommend and I would ask that the powers that be just flip a switch. Doesn't mean you don't have to say people have to end their events, but let's stop creating incentives to do it. I know we all love this game. We love tournaments. We love being part of this community. But right now something bigger is happening, and we need to do our part, and we need to stop creating such really ripe opportunities for a lot of people to get this and pass it along.
It's true. I mean, if a curling bonspiel can get 22 odd people sick, just imagine what a Warhammer event can do.
Absolutely. So I think we've lectured our audience enough, and I think actually a lot of our audience, I would suspect, are well in touch with what we're saying. And the great thing about this thing that we do is we've developed friendships with communities across the world. That includes China, where things were hit the hardest in the first place. All over Europe, North America, basically the entire planet is in touch with us in some way, shape, or form, thanks to this game. So wherever you are and whatever we're about to go through or are currently going through, we wish you the absolute best and most rapid recovery, and to stay healthy and safe for all of you and your families.
Amen.
Heck yeah. So let's really jarringly switch gears and hit a bump.
Tournament news is made possible by BestCoastPairings.com. Download the BCP TO app to organize events for just about any tabletop game system. Download the player app to easily find and participate in events from around the world. Subscribe to BCP for as little as $5 a month to support the team and unlock additional features. Available for iOS and Android. BestCoastPairings.com. Competitive events easier.
All right, everybody. Pete, why don't we swing over to our first stop? That's Battlefield Birmingham, a 100-player event held in what some people may call the cultural capital of the United Kingdom, Birmingham. It was quite the event, Pete. What kind of format did they use?
They used, I believe it was like an ETC, WTC style format. Battlefield Birmingham has been around for years and years now. It's kind of like one of those premier off-the-book events that people try to go to. 100 people showed up. They had a ton of dropouts, of course, due to the situation that we're in right now. But even with those dropouts, they still managed to pack out the event. And yeah, I mean, excellent showings by some big names in the UK community. You had like Andrew Bourbon show up, Manny Chima, who eventually would win the event. Spoilers. Joe Malem, one of the best Drukari / GSC players over there. Like a huge. It was what do we call it? We always call them a murderer's row of players show up. Yes. We've had the TO on before to talk about the long history of the event, how he shuns anything technological. There are pictures on their website of I believe it's his daughter is like writing in like Sanskrit on postcards the results from events.
Perhaps it was cuneiform. We're not sure.
Yeah, it's quite possible. Yeah. I believe they have a stone somewhere where they etch the final standings. It's really cute.
That's right. And they build their own replica of Stonehenge as well, which is quite a feat, and no one else can figure out how they do it.
No, or why it's even done.
That's right. So, nonetheless, I think you mentioned Manny Chima was out to play. So, at least one person showed up who is notable. Anyone else, forego the brazen lack of ITC points, which is funny that there was a time where that was pretty normal for an event not to give ITC points. Now it's like, what? Are you crazy?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, like most of the Glasshammer guys were there. So, Manny, Dan Bates, a few others, Simon Prittis, who we've had on the show before, brought his Tau out to play.
Actually, no, he's the only person ever saying declined to be on the show. So,
but I believe he was on it onse.
I don't think so.
No. Okay. No. Well, sucks to be him. He should have been. I already mentioned Joe Malem. The person who came in fourth at the event, Matt Robertson, the current lead Sisters of Battle player in the world.
Oh, hey, in the world.
Was there to play. He went 3-0-2 with a wackadoodle list. He ran a Triumph of St. Catherine of all things.
Yes.
Which is an amazing model. Most people thought it would never see competitive play. Matt Robertson proved them wrong in decisive fashion, going 3-0-2, 3 wins and 2 draws. James Grover from over at Goonhammer was also there, and I believe he did a write-up on the event. So if you want to go over to Goonhammer, you can check that out. And I believe he also talks a little bit, or is planning on doing an entire write-up on Matt Robertson's list, because that Triumph of St. Catherine was tricksy-prixy for him.
I would bet. So one of the reasons we're even talking about this event is obviously the one, the only, the Manny Chima was the victor. But you said to me in writing, and I don't know what the difference would be, but you do, that he was running sort of an interesting spin on the possessed bomb, so-called. Do you want to get into that in case I might get an interview with him? I might not. But just in case we don't hear from Manny, why don't we hear from you, Pete?
Sure. So Manny's new take on the possessed bomb relies pretty heavily on rubric marines, of all things. In the past, we've seen with the possessed bomb, there's this kind of Nurgle spin to it, where where people will take plague burst crawlers and Nurglings to try and zone out the possessed, so they can't be shot. Using shrouding and things like that to keep their opponents from killing the obviously like linchpin unit of the list. But Manny said, why bother with that? Why not just go all out and take some of them good old Rubric Marines? So he's got 2 squads of 14 Rubric Marines in his list, along with Arima and a couple sorcerers. And he's got 3 Zangor shamans in this Thousand Suns battalion that he brought. And that's just a ton of psychic power that he can use to his advantage. And Rubric Marines are no joke now. While he's not running them as duplicity, so he doesn't get that cute redeploy like to within 9 inches of your opponent. They're still hard to move, and the amount of psychic powers he gets out of this is pretty intense. He's tagged onto that a Slanesh Supreme Command detachment with the Contorted Epitome, who I think at this point everybody knows is just a terror on the board. An Infernal Enrapturous, which helps negate his opponent's psychic abilities, and Herald of Slanesh on top of his 18 plus possessed in an Alpha Legion detachment. I really like the list. I like his take on it. It's very aggressive. It's not like your standard possessed bomb that tries to, at least most people play it, sit back, wait for your opponent to make a mistake, and then charge in and wipe the board. It's very aggressive up front.
First of all, I'm surprised that Manny would be playing an aggressive list.
He's not known for that whatsoever.
He's usually a pussycat on the table. Now, the thing I'm wondering is the possessed, do they play a similar role? Like, are they as buffed as they would be in other versions? There doesn't seem as much things directly related to buffing them, but I am an ignorant person.
He gets enough out of that Master of Possession, the Sorcerer, and just what you get out of the Demonkin Ritualists Vigilus Defiant detachment.
Got it.
Sure, he misses out on a few of the buffs, but what he misses out on, he makes up for with this Thousand Suns detachment.
Yeah.
The other benefit of these Thousand Suns is, like, a lot of people, when Grey Knights were released, said the Possessed Bomb was dead because Grey Knights just pick up Possessed like nobody's business. And most of the stuff people were using to screen those Possessed were also demons. Correct. So no matter what you were doing, you were just getting wiped out. But this has a lot of gameplay into Grey Knights. So because he's got so many casters out of the Thousand Suns detachment, he's got that Infernal and Rapturous. Like, this list looks particularly like, I'm going to make Possessed Bomb work, and whenever I see Grey Knights, they're going to be the ones that are scared.
Yeah.
A lot of because it has all the tools.
Yeah, and a lot of targeted smites too, so you can go punk a lot of characters.
Exactly, and which have a lot of our current lists that people are building into, like, are heavily reliant on.
Yeah.
They usually have a bomb that's reliant on all these buffs from characters, with the exception of maybe the Paladin bomb, which doesn't need a whole lot. Pretty much every other list out there wants, buffs from chaplains and captains, et cetera, and he can take care of those pretty easily.
Okay.
I really hope you do get an interview with him, because I'm curious to see what he says about it. But that's my take, just on glance and through it.
Yeah, just something. Yeah, you just had a look at it. Yeah, just a few ideas.
Just a few minutes.
I would suspect that even if I don't trick him into talking to me over the internet, that there is probably extensive coverage of this, maybe somewhere around Glasshammer. Maybe Kick the Tires on Vanguard Tactics. It's probably somewhere. So if we don't get Manny, he's probably talked about it somewhere, and you might have to pay a shilling or two. Throw him a coppa.
And I will say, this isn't the first time I've seen this. I believe I've talked about this a little bit last week. Maybe not on this show, but maybe on Chapter Tactics. This kind of move towards Rubric Marines as the screen for the Possessed Bomb, because it does have legs, especially in that Grey Knight matchup, the one that they're most afraid of.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll leave Birmingham at that, because we don't really know what happened outside of that. You don't even have the third place list.
Oh, I did eventually get it. I've just been lazy. That's Adam Ryland essentially ran another Thousand Suns / Chaos Marine Possessed Bomb, very similar to what Manny ran. So you see, it's got legs.
Alrighty, well, let's hit a quick bump, or maybe talk to Manny Chima.
Tournament news.
Hi guys, I'm Manny Chima, one of the founders of Glasshammer Gaming and the head coach for the Glasshammer list writing and coaching service, and you're listening to the 40k Stats Center.
Well, there you go. Whether or not there was a interview preceding this, we at least got to hear from Manny for a few seconds, so that's nice.
Sorry, I just wanted to say it is Mother's Day as we record this, and Manny said he needed to have tea with his aunties, so it's quite possible he's just too busy for us.
It is, but for good reason. All right, so Berry Bash, a little closer to home for me. I was originally supposed to go to this, and then I decided not to for reasons, which we've discussed at length already. So that left the field open. I mean, because I was not attending the Berry Bash, a 48-player ITC event run by Scary from Scodcast, I guess, it was anyone's to win.
Yeah, I mean, last year it had hit major status. We had the likes of TJ Lanigan there, Jim Vessel, Val Heffelfinger. I believe you attended last year.
No.
Scary himself as a player, though. So it was a big deal. This year they did have a number of dropouts, and 48 players. Like you say, once you remove names like yourself and others, it does open up the field a little bit. But that being said, if you take a quick look at that top four, I don't think you're seeing a lot of surprises there.
Okay, well, let's see. What sort of names are we looking at?
Well, I mean, the event was won by Devin, stop looking at me, Schwan, running a double Paladin bomb. You had in second place, you had Dustin the Buzzsaw Henshaw, who was running a Ridge Runner list with Jackals, of all things. Just like loads of bikes comboed with Ridge Runners. Loved the list. I believe he was undefeated going into the final round before he lost to Devin.
He was. I point that out in my interview with him.
Yes, because it's very shocking and sad that they still decided to do 6 rounds only. I know we've talked up. Let's tangent for a second.
Yes,
we
absolutely.
have talked up the 6-round event pretty heavily.
Yes,
you and I heftily, as it were. But I don't know if it's necessary all the time.
Well, I would say it's necessary when you need that many rounds to determine a sole winner. But
yes.
Berry Bash was one of the rare events where there was no undefeated player. Like literally everyone had at least a loss.
Yep. And it does occasionally happen. Usually when I see this, it's at like a very small GT, like they hit that minimum 28 players, and then day 2, like 8 people dropped out because they were too drunk. So then you'll kind of see that occasionally where the top place is 4-1. Because the guy that was 3-0 going into day 2 is passed in an alley somewhere. This just happens. But yeah, so Berry Bash goes to 6 rounds. The undefeated going into that final round, Dustin Henshaw, goes up against Devin Swan, who would be my nightmare to play in a final round, knowing that I'm the only undefeated player. It's just one of those things. Like you look at those Devin? Cyborg eyes. I have only met him at a distance, and I will say, it's terrifying.
One of my favorite. So just a little aside playing Devin. I really like Devin. I've gotten to lose to him a couple of times now at various tournaments. Usually he's way ahead of me so I don't even get to lose to him. But in the last event that I went to, which was a small GT, I was playing him, and he had this thing where like no matter what was happening, and he was legitimately losing, he was very confidently telling me that I was going to lose, and it just worked. He's got some above the table action, including maybe a very neutral demeanor, we might say, that give him a bit of an edge, but he's actually a really great guy and wonderful to talk to about 40K, which you'll hear in my interview with him.
Did you want to cut to that?
Wow, why don't we? Over to me again, and we're off to the races.
Alrighty.
All right, Devin, now it has been a week since what I think I remember is your championship at the old Berry Bash.
Yeah. Yep, it has been a week.
Well, congratulations on your triumph.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, you might go down as the last Canadian GT champion.
That is possible. At least the last champion for a while. Everything here is pretty shut down right now.
What was it like on the ground there? Was there a little bit of nervousness, or was this not fully sunk in yet? Because
wasn't really fully sunk in. Everybody was sad that the bar didn't have Corona beer, so yeah, it was that kind of feeling.
So things were still ironic.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was a bit surprised it went ahead, not gonna lie, but that's cool. I'm glad it did, and within another 7 days, we'll know if it was a good idea or not.
Yeah, I guess we'll be finding out.
The COVID. All right. So, Devin, you, I believe your words, not mine, copied Lawrence Baker's list, which you and a lot of people have done. Obviously, you had some great success. What were some differences, if any, that you had between how Lawrence has run the double paladin?
Yeah, so our lists are like almost identical. Probably the big difference is that Lawrence took Voldus and put Falchions on all his strikes, and I cheaped out and put Halberds on mine and took Drago. Yeah, it's pretty much the only difference.
Now, was that like a models available restriction? I don't think so, because even Diogo, I think, played the exact same list as you as well, right?
Yes, he did.
So those were choices.
Yeah, so when I was building the list, I realized I didn't really need the third power from Voldus that much. But I did like having the full rerolls from Drago.
Did you find that you were running it at all differently than Lawrence? I mean, he's detailed how he was playing it, here and on Art of War quite specifically. How did you enjoy the double paladin bomb?
It reminded me a lot of Death Stars.
Yeah.
From 7th, and not because I'm going to put this invisible 2-up reroll wind ball unit in the middle of the table and you just can't kill it. It's a very uninteractive army where I'm going to sit behind a wall and shoot you, and you're just going to take it for 6 turns, and I'm going to win.
Okay.
That's basically what it is. It's pretty much I'm going to park 20 paladins, shoot you out of line of sight with both of them, and yeah, there's nothing you can do about it.
No, I mean, you did have a loss, so someone did something about it. What was that about?
Centurions did something about it. Turns out Assault Centurions are really good at killing paladins.
Okay. Well, I assume they got to get the jump on you a little bit.
Yeah, that was he went first, got the worst deployment. It was just a cascade of things just going wrong. Yeah, I probably could have done some things differently. But actually being able to stop the infiltrating aggressors that hit you turn 1, and then basically soften you up for the dozen Assault Centurions that'll be dropping on you on turn 2, it is really hard to do.
So aside from that, did you describe how your victory, your crowning moment was achieved on that top table? Were you just hiding behind stuff, shooting to victory?
Yeah, pretty much. So a little bit of backstory about the Berry Bash and me. I've won Best General at that tournament 4 years in a row. And overall, it was always evaded me by a few points. And I was not going to let it slip by me this year. So really that final moment, it was probably turn 4. One of the other top tables had came in. There was a high score. And I was just you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to go and try and get a 40-point win. I think I went with 36 in the end. But at that point in time, I was just doing the whole hide behind walls and shoot you with paladins trick.
Yeah.
So, and that's one thing with the army. When you're in a situation like that where you need a big win, if you're in the running for a top prize and you need the extra points, or if you're in an event where you can have 2 people that are undefeated, or if you just need to break out and get points for whatever reason,
team environment.
Yeah, knowing when to break the castle and actually go for it is a big thing. If I'd broken the castle 1 turn earlier, I probably would have lost, honestly. But pretty much what you want to do with this army is pretty much sit back and just kill 1 or 2 things a turn and just score your points. And know that when you've hit the point in the game where you've killed enough of your opponent's army that you don't need to really worry about them retaliating when you jump out, that's pretty much when you go for it.
Okay. And then what are you going for in that case? Just maxing out any other options you got, hold more and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I was getting hold, kill, and kill more every turn.
Okay.
Actually, Dustin didn't kill a unit until turn 3. Or no, sorry, the Calamorph plonked a Apothecary on turn 2. And then he killed a Strike Squad on turn 3, and that was, I think, all I lost for the whole game.
That's rough.
Yeah. But yeah, because I was getting kill, hold, and kill more every turn, and he was getting hold more in bonus.
Yeah.
Because it was the mission 6, the put a character on 3 objectives, and GSC biker characters are pretty quick, so they're going to get to be on objectives as much as they want.
Yes, sir.
So going into like turn 4, we're actually tied on primary. Actually, the game was very close going into that turn 4. So I knew at that point in time, like if I kept it going as it was, I was probably going to win by like 2 points.
Mm-hmm. So that low grinding win.
Yeah. But like I said, I won it overall. So I figured, you know what? Not really much. He only had 3 Ridge Runners left. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go for it.
Heck yeah, and it paid off. So that's pretty sweet. Because I think last 2 Berry Bashes have been TJ Lanigan? Is that right? Or maybe just the last one?
No, last year TJ won last year.
Mm-hmm.
The year before was Josh Death.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The year before that was Dan Platt.
Yes, sir. R.I.P.
And the year before that, I can't remember even who it was the year before that.
Dan Platt, by the way, still with us, just not, out there as often. All right. Well, congratulations, sir. Do you have any advice out there for folks now facing a great deal of social distancing while we wait for the COVID nonsense to resolve?
Paint your models.
Devin.
Which is advice I'm not going to follow.
So what are you going to do?
Probably just play video games and work from home.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's a good rule of thumb. Are you going to hit that tabletop simulator?
Maybe. I don't know. I've never actually really looked at it.
Never tried it?
Nope.
It's a way. It's a way to play. I own it along with like 100,000 other video games I've never played, but I've got it. So there you go. Maybe we can get some reps in.
All right. Well, maybe. But probably the most important advice I can give everyone: stay inside. Just please stay inside.
I agree. All right, Devin. Well, I appreciate it. I thank you for your time. And I hope you fare well in all of the imaginary GTs you play in your mind for the next few months.
I will be sure to win them all.
And thanks to the magic of editing, we're now back with Peter the Falcon. And I realized after we went to that interview that I kind of meant to do Dustin Henshaw first. But hey, whatever.
It is what it is. Such is life. I do want to make a quick correction. I had said Dustin had come in second place. In the end, he'd actually come in third, being bumped on battle points by Jeffrey Ponderada, who is best known for the Muscle Beach list that he initially created way back in a time long forgotten. He was also running a Ridge Runner list, although kind of a more contemporary one, similar to the ones that we saw back at the Charity Hammer event, using Gene Stealers. I believe he had an Exocrine is the new tech he added to his version. So while similar in that he decided to bring a bunch of buggies like Dustin, it was different in that he didn't have the super cool motorbikes. So unfortunately, Jeff, even though you came in second, you're third place in my heart.
Fair enough. Now, before we get to the interview with old Dusty, anything you'd like to point out about his list? He does talk about the use of ATVs and the reasons behind them, but anything else that you liked about him? I called it the Frankie Giampapa list because I seem to remember Frankie running a bunch of bikes really, really early in Just Call, but I might be wrong.
You are 100% correct. Frankie super talked up the Rusted Claw bike combos, though, and they did see a lot of play, perhaps not to the extent that Frankie had been running them early on, before the Nerf 2 demo charges. It was pretty common to see 1 or 2, sometimes 3 decent-sized squads of bikes with demo charges to just get in, drop a night, etc. Mm-hmm. But we haven't really seen them this much and successfully played in a long time. This is the really awesome thing about that Iron Hands FAQ is that we are starting to see lists that actually make me excited about the game again. Yeah. And it's stuff like what Dustin's playing, what Jeffrey's playing, even what like Manny played earlier, even though I've seen the Possess Bomb a million times now. Mm-hmm. The modifications we're seeing to these lists, it's really exciting. I'm really, really interested to see how the meta eventually shapes out in 3 or 4 or 5 months' time, once we're allowed to actually play 40K again.
Yeah, it's well, I've said in a few of the interviews, but it's probably going to be another edition. But hey.
I mean, even if it is, I can't imagine they change so much that it breaks it from the ground up. You know what I mean?
We'll have to see. So why don't we quickly go over to Mr. Dustin Henshaw for his take on Berry Bash. So do you have any sheltering in place plans? What is your COVID-19 survival strategy there, Dustin?
I married an Italian woman, so we already have a stockpile of food that will last us years. I mean,
so you're why there's no pasta in any of the Loblaws?
We already had that way long before this was ever a thing. So
yeah, fair. Okay, so there's that. Any ideas for keeping busy? You got any games or anything you're looking forward to playing?
Yeah, I've got a couple games that I'm playing, getting some just random painting done of things that I've never needed to paint, but what the hell, I may as well now.
Yeah, Devin, I just got off the phone with Devin, and he said that everyone should catch up their painting backlog, and I thought that was funny coming from him, and he said, well, he's not painting, so
yeah,
and he's heard this is what people could do.
It's true. They can do that. I do have a lot of Tyranids that will probably never see the table, but they're not painted. They should paint them.
It's almost like you have a podcast, because that was an excellent segue, sir.
Right?
Into the topic at hand, which would be, I guess, a top table appearance for you, sir.
Yes, it was.
Against the aforementioned evil Devin, who I guess we'll probably hear after this part. But you were rocking a little Forces of the Hive Mind, I assume?
I was. Well, no, actually, I was doing pure Gene Stealer cult because that's what I did last year at the Berry Bash, and I wanted to kind of have a
100% pure Colombian Gene Stealer cult.
That's right. That's right. No, not even any Imperial Guard in there, just pure Gene Stealer cult.
That's delightful. So now, were you undefeated coming into the final round?
I was the only undefeated person coming to the final round. Yeah.
Yeah, rubbing that in a little bit for you.
I had to.
So that's okay. So you're probably riding fairly high. I mean, had you done some mental reps or even actual reps against the now famous double paladin bomb?
I managed to get one rep in time from a player that was kind of familiar with it, so I could at least get a little bit of an idea of what it was capable of. Mm-hmm. Because there's a couple things I wasn't sure if it was capable of doing, and now that I saw it firsthand in my test game, so I was a little bit more prepared than I definitely would have been, because there was a couple things that if I wasn't ready for it, I would have got crushed.
Right.
Because I wouldn't have been prepared, like I said. You had because you read it sometimes, and you don't really see its effect until you see it on the table when it happens to you.
Yeah. And I mean, Lawrence did have that sort of that final round game against Vic on his channel, which was great, but he didn't really make a good go of it. So, you didn't really get a lot of intel out of that game. And outside of that, I don't know. I haven't seen any really good examples of it in action. So how did it, well, first of all, what were you running? What did you do? Did you do anything differently with your GSC, or were you running something similar to what you've done in the past?
I was running something pretty similar. So I was running my 45 bikes, which is pretty much my staple at this point. I love my 45 bikes.
The Frankie G and Papa.
Yeah, the Frankie G and Papa, exactly. I've been running that for a while now, so I made some slight modifications to it because I needed some more shooting in the current meta, because I didn't have enough punch in the rage phase, because now that we have to really be ready for a good alpha strike because of no seizing, I need to make sure that I can actually do that and make it worthwhile for me to go first, because everybody always wants to make me go first as it is, because I'm a G-Citadel player. Giving me second turn is a very big disadvantage for them.
So you had some 4x4s added to the list then?
I had 9 of them.
Sick.
Yeah, and I guess still they're not really my style, but again, because I need to have that alpha strike, they fit that role perfectly. Plus, when they're on the table with all my bikes, it just looks awesome, like a Mad Max style kind of thing.
And you can just hear the sick.
When you made that sound, it actually made me think of Excite Bike from Nintendo. That's what it reminded me of.
Okay, that works for me too. Anyway, we digress. So you had a pretty good run all the way to the end there. So you must have played some of Canada's finest.
I did. I in fact played 2 of the Team Canada last year in my run there, and another very, very well-known player, Diogo. He's also a fantastic player, playing the exact same list as Devin.
Okay.
So it was not an easy tournament.
So a little false confidence, perhaps, after Diogo?
No, because I got really lucky when he rolled deployment. They both made me go first, which is already, again, I hate having to go first, especially against that list, because there's nothing I can really do. But I got really lucky when he rolled deployment, because he rolled a 2 and a 5. So it was Dawn of War, which meant I could actually get into his face whether he was hiding or not on first turn.
Okay.
So that made a huge difference, because I actually managed to get a first turn charge off with my acolytes into one of his paladin bombs and killed his librarian that had the fire and fade power. That made a huge difference.
Very nice. Okay, and then so what transpired a little differently against old Devo?
Well, first of all, because I didn't get rid of the fire and fade power, because I didn't have a chance to, because we got hammer and anvil on that one.
Right.
There was no way I could have got rid of that, which means both of the paladin squads were basically functioning at full strength the entire game.
Yeah. And they were, I assume, just sort of either popping in and out or just standing behind something and shooting you.
Yep, 100%. One was doing one was doing the other.
Interesting.
That's definitely how you're playing that. And the problem is with paladins shooting at bikes, my bonus armor goes away with -2. So normally I'm a 4-up, but at -2 just goes away, because that's just how Rusted Claw works. And when your Stormbolters are firing like 40 Stormbolter shots at strength 5, -2 damage, kind of deletes bikes.
That's harsh. That's harsh.
It's pretty harsh. So I had to basically throw him a bike squad every turn and then have a character sitting behind all the objectives, so I would get the bonus every turn and still at least get hold more.
Right.
I had to try and get as big of a lead as possible, and before he did too much damage to my army, because starting turn 4-5, he'll come out and start getting like 4 or 5 point turns. So I knew I had to get as big of a lead as I could before that happened.
Yeah, and I mean, Devin did say that it was close. So what was sort of the turning point? Where did it slip away from you?
It was turn I think it was turn 5 when he came out.
Yeah.
The moment he came out, because again I couldn't do as much damage to the paladins, and by the time he did come out, I had screens as far as the eye could see, as far as I could, but he managed to get into he managed to make a 9-inch charge into the objective I was holding that kept me with hold more.
Yeah.
Because he had bottom of turn, it was easy to kick me off. So he started getting 5 point turns on turn 5 and turn 6, even though I still got the bonus every turn.
Yeah.
But that swung it just at the end there. I was ahead the entire game until the end there.
And I believe, and where did you wind up finishing for the weekend?
I finished 3rd overall.
Okay, hey, you know, a lot of times top table people get bounced like down outside of 4th place. So there you go, good finish.
Yeah, no, I was very happy with it. It was, and I said I had great games. I can't be upset about it. And like the list, I said it before too. My list was not fully optimized for the meta, but now that I've played it a couple times, I made a couple tweaks, and I'm actually really happy with it now.
Yeah, and I think we were talking a little bit last week. I don't know if you listened, but Peter seems to think that maybe the GSCs, the death of GSC has been overstated a little bit.
It has. The death of Aberrance is definitely true.
Yeah. How do you feel about its stance in the meta? Like, what can it actually pull off, especially in the sort of post-Space Marine FAQ environment?
Well, the post-Space Marine FAQ is definitely very good for us, because that was one of the hard counters to, I wouldn't even say hard counter, but one of the more difficult matches we had. But I fought like one of the new Intercessor spam lists piloted by Jeff Brown, like a guy from Team Canada last year. And I beat it. Mind you, it was, again, another very close game that I had to pull points out of my butt. But it's a list that we will always have trouble with, regardless of the fact it changes now. But GSC is still in a good spot. Like it's because of the Aberrance. I'm going to just outright say it. It's because the Aberrance went up points so much, and that was just the staple of all the GC call lists. Like people are like, okay, bring 20, 30 Aberrance because they're just so good and so worth their points. Yeah. Now that they cost more than like a Centurion squad. Like, all right, they're not worth it anymore. Yeah. But it just forces us to use different tools, and it's kind of like the Space Marines in the same sense. Like, yeah, the Leviathan and stuff don't work as well anymore, but it's forcing them to bring other things that are still good. They just play differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a bit of a curve on that one, and there's a lot of pain involved on any pivot that you make with GSC.
Oh yeah. That's the other thing, because we have cheap point costs, so there's a lot of different models to change it. Luckily, I have a very extensive collection. Yeah, but
really simple but effective and repeatable paint job. I love your army; it looks gorgeous.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Before I leave you, any parting thoughts about the the post Space Marine fact pre-COVID-19 meta?
I'm excited to see how crazy the meta gets after we are able to start playing tournaments again.
Yes.
There's going to be like the meta is going to. I'm using air quotes because I like to do good radio right now. I'm using air quotes. So it's settling right now, mainly because there's nobody playing it. But depending on how long it is until we get to a tournament again, there's going to be so much new shit on the table. It's going to be crazy fun.
It could even be a new edition. Well, Dustin, congratulations on the great showing and for having a fun run with a fun GSC list. And if anyone wants to check it out, go to 40kstats.com. Unaffiliated with this podcast for the record. And of course, Dustin, where could people hear a really probably in-depth blow by blow of your tournament experience co-hosted by a wonderful human?
It's actually a really popular podcast I heard of called Stud or Scrub. You can find it anywhere on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It's everywhere. Just check out the latest episode, and there's some in-depth talks about some of the games there, our experiences, and the guys on there are just a joy to listen to. Absolute joy. Stud or Scrub, you decide. You decide. You decide. Thank you very much, Dustin. You have yourself a wonderful night. You too. Thank you.
Tournament news.
This is the best general, Adam Abramowitz, and you're listening to 40K Stat Center, your number one source for 40K news and tournament information.
Adam Abramowitz, the illustrious, somewhat former host of the Best General podcast, a podcast on hiatus. But what's not on hiatus is the good works and deeds he's doing, getting the message out about a little bit of social distancing through his work at the Army Painter and the support of the Army Painter. So I think that's pretty cool. Shout out to Adam.
Yeah, big shout out to Adam. And you know what? I want to give a shout out to the Battle Brothers podcast. This week they did a Facebook Live. Usually it's only for their Patreons. I believe they said it accidentally. They ended up sending it to the public. And rather than shutting it down, they ran with it. Sean Naden and Juice and Austin Wingfield had a lot of really good stuff to say about, things you can do for social distancing, talking about the game. But they have also said they're going to start doing open, Twitch and Facebook live streams of themselves just chatting with people to kind of get them through this time. And I really respect that. It's something that I think we should all think about. What can we do for the community when we can't be together? Since it is such a social, despite the the common misconceptions about the game, it is such a social game.
Yeah.
Big ups to them for what they are, what they're doing as well.
I think that's super cool. And yeah, I mean, a little bit of a silver lining. This is the age of the internet as well. We have a lot of ways to, although be somewhat isolated and stuck, we have a lot of ways to reach out and have genuine connection with other human beings. So I think we are fortunate to live in the time that we do live in for that very reason. And you can use Zoom, Skype, Duo, whatever you want to do.
Yep.
You can.
I'm probably going to start an ASMR channel for you guys.
Just saying bye-bye.
Saying bye-bye. Hours of that. And maybe I'll read, I was saying as a joke, I was going to read 40K literature on our Twitch channel that we've only ever used for LVO.
Yes.
But I was only going to mouth the words. You'll have to actually figure out what I'm saying. But I figured it'd be cool.
I'd be happy to do some readings. That's hilarious and a wonderful idea.
Well, whatever we can do to keep people happy.
Absolutely. And not going insane. So why don't we, to that end, talk a little bit about Rumble at Rumford, a 40-player ITC event won by King Kong Bartkowitz. I think I finally said his name right.
Yeah, I think it's Bartkowitz. He goes by King Khan. It's on his shirts. It's the best nickname people have thought I've given to somebody.
Lovely.
But he's a great guy. We had him on 2 weeks ago after he won a similar event of similar size with this, new old not Inari list where he's got his, double Shining Spear bombs, his Dark Reapers, all the things that we grew to fear 2 years ago. He's brought back and is making us fear them all over again. He had a really good run, went 5-0. in the finals, he ended up beating Robert Lloyd running pure AdMech. So kudos to Robert, because AdMech have been really struggling basically since LVO. They had a decent record going in and have just been like having their souls crushed up till now.
Do you have any particular insight as to why that may be? They were thought to be maybe one of the beneficiaries of the Space Marine nerf.
They were, but I think the big thing we've seen, and you can see it in the stats as we go, as the weeks progress, is that they don't have a Psychic Awakening book yet, and people have finally, now that the Marine meta has toned down, people are finally able to take advantage of some of the Psychic Awakening bonuses and boons that they'd previously been missing out on. For example, like Tyranids for a long time were thought to have one of the worst Psychic Awakening books. Blood of Baal was amazing for Blood Angels, but a lot of the Tyranid stuff was very unit specific. But Tyranids have been performing gangbusters in the last few weeks. Almost, I'm seeing consistent 4-1s, several 1 or 2 5-0s, and the lists are all over the place. So it's a real big kudos to probably Games Workshop and the testers to some degree, that once they figured out why they broke Marines so much, the game has come to this really cool place where we're seeing such varied lists from armies that have not been competitive for a long time. Yeah. Unfortunately, what it's meant is that some of these armies that have kind of been on the have-not scale due to Psychic Awakening are now starting to struggle. Right. AdMech is one, Imperial Knights, although we'll be talking a little bit about one of them, but still, generally, Imperial Knights, Renegade Knights, Demons as like a Codex list, they've all struggled without having that Psychic Awakening bonus. I mean, so we'll have to see how it all plays out.
To your point, though, last week we had almost a clean sweep of Raven Guard. This week, not at all. Like this week, we've had some pretty varied podiums across pretty much all of the different events.
Yeah, and what we're seeing, and sorry for the rumble at Rumford, folks, that you were super excited to hear us talk about you. We've decided to make this a stat segment. Is we're starting to see the like form of what our tier list, I guess you could call it, for lists in the current meta are. Raven Guard still performing very well. They didn't dip very much in this last week, even though they didn't have any wins. They still had a number of really good performances. They're still sitting at about a 60% win rate. But right with them, we have Nids and Gene Stealer Cults also at about a 60, and Grey Knights. So we've got these kind of like A tier that seems to be building, and we've got enough games where we can see that it's probably not going to move too much of Raven Guard, Grey Knights, and Tyranids / Gene Stealer Cults, like the forces of the Hive Mind. Yeah. And then we've got this huge swath of armies that are between about a 48 and a 52% win rate. And that's kind of the beauty spot for me. I was talking to Reese about this recently. When I look at things, because I know that GW, if they do look at the stats, they really don't go as deep as we do. They don't look at round loss and T-whip as much. Yeah. They're really just interested in win rates. And even though win rates aren't always the key factor, we've said that so many times. For me, if that was what I was going to look at, anything between about a 47 and a 53. That's the key. Usually those guys, they're doing good. Right. Above 53, they probably need something tweaked.
So the Ynnari not Ynnari that King Khan has been running, have you seen it appearing anywhere else before?
We've seen it a few places, but not like this. So Shining Spears have seen a bit of a comeback. Dark Reapers really... There's no such thing as a comeback for them. They've always been good. Even when people said they were bad, we were still seeing people run them. They like Night Spinners and things like that. They're everywhere. The interesting thing is that, Eldar as a whole have not been doing as well in the post-Marine FAQ as they were kind of in that when Marines were on top, which I think is counter to what a lot of people felt. Eldar were at like a 57% win rate with Marines at their top, and like the only thing they were losing to was Iron Hands. Right. So I think a lot of people were like, Eldar are going to just dominate the meta. And what we've seen... Yeah, well, what we've seen is all these other lists have started to come up. That now that people are able to test again because they're not afraid of the boogeymen.
Right.
And we're seeing like guys like King Khan are now like they're on the low end. Like there's not that many of them that are actually pulling out these huge wins with Eldar. They still sit at about a 50% win rate, but that's perfect. That's kind of what we want, right? So yeah, I'm super excited. Congrats to King Khan pulling off that win against Admech. He did end up getting a rematch against Thomas Deutsch. I don't know if you guys recall when he was on last week. 2 weeks ago he had mentioned that his nightmare matchup was against Thomas 2 weeks ago,
right.
And that he basically only won because Thomas made a positioning mistake. This time it doesn't look, at least on paper, like that was the case. He absolutely gave Thomas a good old butt whooping.
Right.
Like a 32-22 win. Still, you never know with those point scores. That would be the only question I'd have for him, is how that rematch went. But overall, yeah. Congrats to King Khan.
Congrats. All right. And just while we're over in the UK, I would love to highlight, because I did get a little interview with him, a friend of mine, Ace Face, a.k.a. John Hickton from the Twisted Dice channel and podcast. Now, he won an event running kind of like a Tau mech list, very similar to the previously mentioned Devon Swan version of this list that was being run last summer. What did you think of the Ace Face take on the mech Tau list?
Well, the one thing I'll say about Ace Face is that he is literally the devil on everyone's shoulder. If you've ever if you play 40K, that's just who he is. But I like the mech list. It got a lot better with the Marine nerfs. I'm not sure it's like an A tier list. I believe Tau have better options out there, but I mean, you can't argue with results.
I guess you can't, but and also John's not here to argue with you, so why don't we cue up my little interview with him, because he has a bit of a different take, pretty aggressive stance on how good he thinks this list is, but we'll let him tell you all about it. Okay, here we are with John Hickton, aka Ace Face. Am I allowed to use your real name?
Yeah, you absolutely can. Unlike some people, I'm not embarrassed about that.
I have no idea who you might be talking about. It's me.
No idea either. It's you.
It's me. So Ace, I guess I at least you have a super cool alias. Apparently you won an event recently. What were you running?
I was running Tau for a change.
You weren't. You don't just be like, I was running Tau. You weren't just running Tau. You were running a version of Tau we have not seen in these parts in some time.
Absolutely, yeah. It's quite an out there list in the scheme of things. There's a lot of talk when the new Tau stuff came down the line that this particular build or versions of this build were not still the best build. There were too many counters to it. They weren't the way to go. So I kind of wanted to test that and the kind of the tech that I put in it. I disagreed with it. I think, there's just so much in this list that is so vile, to be honest. It needed testing and it needed putting to the test. And yeah, it's very different from what you're seeing at the moment.
Yeah, and we've seen similar lists to this. Devon Swan was running something like this in 2019. 2019 was that last summer?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, 2019.
Yeah, and Devon actually he won a GT as well this week, stealing Lawrence Baker's double paladin list. So there you go. There's some reciprocity going on across the pond here. Why don't you go over quickly what's in your list? Because I'm just gonna holler that there's 2 Remora stealth drones, which is just batshit crazy. What else is there?
Yeah, so it's 3 detachments. So it's 2 of the custom detachments, which are the gifted pilots and hardened warheads. So basically making the most of all those extra AP on the missiles to really kind of give them a little bit extra sting, particularly on the smart missile systems. They suddenly become really scary for Marines or anything else that wants to cower and cover, because ignoring cover straight away so they don't get that 2 up, but then also having an additional -1 means they're always really in trouble when you start firing those things at them, and I've got masses of them in the list. So both the battalion detachments both consist of those, and the gifted pilots means that all the tanks, when they stand still or move less than half distance, are re-rolling 1s to wound, and obviously any wound manipulation is some of the strongest you're going to get in the game. So those two things in themselves suddenly take that kind of mech archetype and take it up quite a few notches. And then the list is the third detachment is a Farsight detachment, which is a flyer wing, and all the Farsight stuff heavily benefits flyers because they're so rapid. They're always going to be pretty much within the 12 inches for the get a marker light and the 6 inches if you want them for rerolling 1s to wound. So the whole army pretty much rerolls 1s to wound. So in the two, so I've got 2 battalions. They're more or less the same. So we've got a Fireblade and a commander in one of the battalions. The commander is a Cold Star commander. He's got the 4 missile pods. That's great because again you're maximizing the use of that custom strat or custom tech. We've given you the additional AP, which is really handy. The Fireblade gives you a reliable marker light. Then we've got 3 minimum units of fire warriors, but in each fire warrior unit I do have the Shazui with a marker light, again just going for as many marker lights as I can pack into this list. In heavy support, I've got 3 Skyrays with all the standard shenanigans, but they are really, really heavy lifters in this list because, one, they come with those smart missiles, but also the Seeker missiles get the benefit as well with the additional AP. And when you're strength 8 standard and then you're going to reroll 1s to wound, when those missiles light up, they really light up well. So we've got 3 of those. So that's the first battalion detachment. In the second battalion detachment, I've got very similar build up, but this time I've just got 2 of the Fireblades, and then I've got again the same 3 units of fire warriors with the Shazui with the marker lights, and then in the heavy support of this one I've got 3 hammerheads. The additional thing with the hammerheads is I've also stocked them out with as many Seeker missiles as I can, just to maximize the use of that. So we're just kind of just putting as many Seeker missiles in the list as possible. I've got Grek in there because he's probably the best 20 points you can spend in a Tau army, just for the opportunity. Yeah, just jump up and do some mortal wounds. Sometimes, in my second game, he pretty much took out the final Gene Stealer in a big, massive 20-man unit to give me the kill more. So sometimes he can just come up clutch for you. So he's a cool little tech in there. Sit on a backfield objective and just abuse the character rule as well from time to time. So he's really cool. And then I have my flyer wing detachment, as I said, which is Farsight. In this, I've got 3 of the Sunshark bombers, which I always thought were rubbish until I used them, and they're absolutely they're incredible. They are absolutely incredible. On paper, they look like nothing, but when you team them with all the Farsight goodness now from the new book, so they're almost always going to be re-rolling 1s to hit and then re-rolling 1s to wound. But on top of that, you have the ability to do their standard bombing, which is great. But then with the new Farsight stratagem of being able to do additional mortal wounds when they go near something, so you can pick up to 3 units, and then you can do up to D3 mortal wounds on every unit within 3 inches of those units. So it gets a bit crazy real quick.
That's actually super sweet. So what's up with the Remora Drones? Because that is one of my favorite Tau units, and you got 2 of them here.
So it's again going along the same story of trying to get as many Seeker missiles in as I can. So each one of those Remoras has 2 Seeker missiles. They've also got a marker light inbuilt. And what it does is it gives me the ability to maximize use of that stratagem because they've got quite a small base. So they can get in little gaps, make sure I'm doing as many mortal wounds as I possibly can. They're great at just holding space in the board, because what this list also does is it really can congest the board really, really quickly. because the other bit of tech with those Sunshark bombers is the drones, the interceptor drones. They move 20 inches, which no one sees coming. So you can just, unload those. They move up 20 inches. The Remoras takes a load of real estate as well. The bombers go to the back of the board. You're Moncaring with your tanks, and before you know it, you're taking up 3/4 of the board with an army that on paper looks very static because it's just bristling with guns. So that's kind of, and that there can be just quite a nuisance with those burst cannons. They can, because they've got that little inbuilt rule where they don't have the minus for moving, so they can really kind of get in little gaps and snipe out characters. I think there's probably some play in the big unit and kind of abusing it, and that's what a lot of people are looking at. But just having two little individuals, in my list, what they tend to do is just be little nuisances. They don't tend to be high focus, high value targets for the opponent to go for, but quite often they can just be really, really useful at just kind of just taking real estate and doing work.
Now, in the I guess the later versions of Devin's list like this, I think eventually he moves away from the Sunshark bombers. Obviously, he doesn't have the Psychic Awakening tech, but he also he picked up, I don't know where he got them. The factory's probably offline these days, but he got these sort of the heavy support high yield missile pod hammerheads, and that's what he was running. Basically 3 of those and 3 of the other guys. Do you think that might be, if you had it, would that be a good addition to this list?
I think they're about 30 points too much when I looked at them. So they're basically a broadside in a tank. So that's kind of they have almost exactly the same damage output of a broadside. So they have the advantage of having fly, so they're not going to get locked down, but have the disadvantage of being a few points more, and also they don't have drone support.
They also have a hammerhead's weapon skill as well, ballistic skill too.
They do, yeah. So I like them, but I still think they're 30 points too much. And I think with the access of the Psychic Awakening stuff, the Sunshot bombers just offer way too much, because they give you such a lot of mortal wound output straight off the bat. So it means that you can straight away start to really pressure your opponent from turn 1, which I think that sometimes if your opponent has the stability with, say, things like Paladins and what have you, they probably have the survivability to be able to shake off the smart missile systems and hide from everything else. So I kind of think that the ability to really kind of pressure them and kind of mess around with their deployment, because they don't want you flying over them and bombing them once and then landing next to them and then doing more mortal wounds. So so it's kind of it's just that extra threat and that extra angle that the list goes with. So it goes with mass output from the first turn with all those Seeker missiles. It goes with mass you can't hide from me with the smart missile systems, but it also goes with mass mortal wounds as well. So it kind of hits you in the 3 different angles. So it's when you look at it on paper, you're a bit confused. You go, oh, are you spamming missiles this way? No, are you spamming missiles this way? Are you spamming mortal wounds? And the reality is it's pretty much doing all of it.
Yeah. So do you think this list has legs, or is it, this was a smaller GT? Really fascinating top 4 here. You've got yourself, you got, I think, a 9 broadside list coming in second. You've got, I'm just scrolling, you got my boy Gav. He was rocking the double Paladins
list.
and then looks like Blood Angels kind of bringing up the 4th place list. So you probably went through some interesting things. Do you think your list has actual legs, or was this sort of just a nice run for an off meta list?
I'm going to go pretty extreme, and I'm going to say I don't think there's a lot that can stop it that's currently in the meta. I just think that particularly in ITC, with now a lot of ability to manipulate your deployments, this just outranges almost everything with so much alpha strike or beta strike ability. And unless you have tons of ignores cover, you pop the stratagem for prepared positions, all your tanks are on a 2+, they're all backlined, but then still have the ability with Moncar to hit everything more or less first turn. It's got so much vile shooting. I mean, so 4 of my 5 games were pretty much over by turn 2. It just hits you so hard. I mean, I think this goes through Iron Hand Horde quick enough. Again, Mortal Wounds will do it, and those Seeker missiles, just the volume of shooting will take them down, I think. I think probably its biggest threat is if you go full-on assault with, say, Blood Angels with 3 Sanger bombs and the Death Company, and maybe you can go threat overload on it and get into it. I did in practice play a buffed up double Sanger bomb, and it did.
Now that list was literally there. Did you just not face it?
I didn't face it. I didn't face it. I think I was fortunate. I think I can beat it, but that's quite a tough matchup because I think with that banner, doing the maths, I have to get quite lucky, and he has to get quite unlucky for me to get through all the stuff that will then be right in my lines. So that's a tough one. I think the Grey Knights don't have the units to stay. I could just hit them too quickly. But I think it's top of the meta. Like literally, I think it's amazing. But we'll see. We'll see whether players better than me get hold of it.
The great thing here, Aceface, is that 40K shut down for the foreseeable future. When it comes back, it'll be maybe a different edition. So you can say whatever the hell you want. This thing could have won LVOs for all we know.
No, it can't be that list.
It's impossible. Also, best pilot. No one's going to run this list better. You heard it here, folks. Now, John, before we say goodbye, this might be the last time we're talking to folks for a while. Do you have any pointers for people who are currently setting off on their self-isolation journey? Any tips for surviving the next couple weeks or months?
Well, come and tune in to Twisted Dice would be my best advice. Absolute shameless plug. But we've got loads and loads to kind of occupy your time. So we've got a podcast, Tip of the Spearhead. It's a little bit on the adult side. So it's, if you've got fragile ears, don't listen to it. But if you want to hear me and Salty Simon just kind of rip the hell out of all sorts going on within the community and within the meta, check that out. There's a big back catalogue there, which is quite funny and entertainment. We've got battle reports going back for ages, so each week we put out a glossy dice by dice battle report. We'll probably have another couple of those before potentially they'll dry up a little bit, but we're going to do a lot more tactics and painting content for you to kind of keep you occupied in the meantime. And we're very active on social media as well, so definitely check out Twisted Dice for all your hobby needs. As far as kind of keeping yourself occupied, just get through that big haul of unpainted miniatures. That's what I'm trying to do.
What are you working on?
So I've actually got the crisis suits on my desk at the moment. Yeah, they're actually, I think, the fun way to play New Tal. They're the way I probably would have played if I had enough time to practice it, but it's definitely a lot less forgiving than my list.
Yeah, well, that's the way Mr. Siegler's gone. So we'll see if we ever get to see him on the tables again, and if he's running that. I know on Art of War on their pay-per-view, he's been testing out various suit lists like that. So I think
it's amazing.
Yeah,
I think it's amazing.
It's fun. Hey, and a lot of people are thinking now there's 2 builds. Well, maybe you've shown that this third build, which already sort of existed out there, now it's got some new life. So thank you very much, John, for chatting about it.
Pleasure.
And really lovely to get to talk with you. I hope to see you again real soon, man.
Cheers, Val.
Tournament news.
I'm Lawrence Baker.
And this is the B-Bone from Tabletop Tactics.
You're listening to 40K Stat Center.
Well, all right, our friends at Tabletop Tactics. I mean, maybe an excellent option for those folks who might be furloughed or taking a little isolated time out for the next little while.
Yeah, I mean, they always put on a good show. The B-Bone is possibly my 4th favorite 40K personality. So, yeah.
So that's not too bad. He would still make the 40kstats.com podium. So that's fine.
Yeah.
It's a strong
like if I had a top 4 archive of 40K personalities, B-Bone would definitely be in that top 4. Unfortunately, when you know people like Val Heffelfinger, that's one slot that's immediately taken.
That's right.
So.
5th place is locked. Actually, this is something I'm going to throw out there. One thing I've always wanted to do is to just go back and actually even just do a wins losses recording and just see how hapless Bone has been on the channel. Just from like a by the numbers perspective, I'd love to see the win percentage of, because I often call, Lawrence is a bit like the Harlem Globetrotters of that channel. Like he's like bouncing the ball off their face before like, eating an ice cream cone, dribbling, and like doing an easy layup. Like it's kind of harsh. So it'd be great to see
really
numbers to back that up.
It is. Like that is the best analogy I think you could make for it. Is that Lawrence is the Harlem Globetrotters to literally everyone else on that channel's Washington Generals.
That's right. And kudos to you for knowing that the opposing team is the Washington Generals, proving once again that we're on the same page, everybody. All right, so what are we wrapping up with? We're wrapping up with the Maryland Open.
Maryland Open, yes. So this is an event run in, guess where?
Baltimore?
Maryland. Yeah, and it was initially it was going to be part of the BFS con, I believe was what it was supposed to be part of.
Okay.
The con got canceled last minute, but the communication hadn't really properly gone out, so they decided to keep going with the Maryland Open. They ended up with 28 players that showed up, ITC standard missions, and that kind of area's top players did still make a come out. Shane Watts running Grey Knights, who the player that has bounced around so many times now. I just don't know. I used to respect him when he played Custodes, but now disappoints me. Anyway, Ken Knox, who we had on the show a few weeks, running his new take on Iron Hands with the Blood Angels Supreme Command. And the eventual winner, Alex Brown, running. Did you take a look at this list, Val?
I am currently catching up to it. It's a bit of a throwback.
A bit of a throwback. Look at that first unit in the list. I think that's the key component here.
It appears to be a knight Castellan?
Castellan, yeah. Something that we thought was essentially extinct. That dinosaur from a bygone age. Yes, Alex Brown made the Castellan work again. Now, sure, it was a 28-player event. Sure, he probably only played the worst players in 40K. I joke, guys. I joke. But yeah, he put on a bit of a clinic with House Tyrannus Knights. He had 2 Knight Crusaders and that Knight Castellan just putting out the damage.
And then the Rusty 17 was actually the Rusty 19 with 2 Honor Guard Dune Crawlers.
100%. So he was not taking things lightly. This is a pure damage. I hope I go first against Blood Angels list, because I don't know how he beats a good Blood Angels list, but I mean, if he doesn't play them, he's in a really good spot. I think that was the one thing that got messaged to me first was, are you sure that's the guy that won, after I posted the lists last week? and I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, did he play a Blood Angel Smat Captain? I mean, it's House Tyrannus. His opponent would need more than one.
True.
But still, it's great to see again, especially given we were mentioning earlier how poorly Knights have been performing for the last month or two.
Yep.
Having a Knight list top anything just kind of shows that we're in a better place meta-wise.
That's right. Just raising that profile. And sometimes the best strategy is just don't play your bad matchup.
Yeah, sometimes.
All right. Well, only one last bump for old time's sake, and then we'll wrap this one up.
A1.
Tournament news.
It's Diff
and Adam from Down Under Network
and Down Under Pairings, where we deliver tournament coverage so fresh,
it's in the future.
And you're listening to 40K Stats.
All right, that is a now defunct bumper. Down Under Network no longer exists. Became the Art of War Down Under?
Something like that.
And DUP announced some sort of thing with BCP, I think. That was implied. And then nothing. So we have no idea what's going on with our friends from Down Under.
Yeah, I mean, it was something I was extraordinarily excited for 24 hours. This concept that maybe they merged, maybe they're doing some kind of tag team. But there's been really no follow-up. And I'm curious as to where that goes, because that has been something I've been talking about for about a year and a half now that I was hoping would happen. Yeah. So cross fingers, we get some updates soon.
Hopefully something did indeed happen and that it was, in fact, good for everyone involved. Now we're at the end here, and Pete, it's a bit bittersweet.
It really is. I mean, this is something I love to do every week, but at the same time, if there's no events to talk about, and if the ones that are doing it possibly shouldn't be, there's no reason for us to record, really.
That's true. And I won't lie, my mind is a bit preoccupied by other things these days. So there's that element too. And everyone's got to deal with what we're dealing with in their own particular ways. We're going to take a little step back. I highly doubt this is the last you'll hear from us. And even in the next few months, I mean, I do tend to whore myself out to other shows. Pete's kind of getting into it these days. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I was on Best in Faction this week. So if you guys want to take a listen, we talked about, improving your game when you can't play 40K. It's something that I have a lot of experience with, living in isolation already.
That's right.
So compared to the rest of you, my quarantine has not really been as extensive. It has really just meant not going to the grocery store one more time per week.
There you go.
Other than that, I'm doing what I always did anyway. But yeah, so it's a really good episode. Me, Chuck, who else is on that show? Colin, I guess, is a guy that's on it. Mitch Pelham. We talk extensively about, things that they're doing to try and improve their game now that they can't get in, events, and me about, what I've been doing for the past 3 years for that exact same reason. And we're still got chapter tactics. I believe this last week they had Reese on to talk about league play, because I think that is one of the ways that some of these events are trying to, still get 40K in without endangering people. So offering up league matches where, one-on-one games, so there's not, 20 people in a room. So that was an interesting show to listen to. I believe Scary was on as well.
Reese suggested a Dawn of War tournament.
Man, that would be so cool. We've talked about Tabletop Simulator before. There's lots of stuff going on. Lots of stuff.
Yeah, lots of ways, again, thanks to the power of the internet. My number one thing I stocked up on was a new gaming laptop. So I can I can actually do things, and I'm hoping to join a Blood Bowl 2 league that actually is being run by an actual league here in Toronto. So
well, that'd be exciting. I mean, I love the Blood Bowl 2. I just downloaded it on my PlayStation. I've got it on my laptop. I've been updating my wife's PC so that she has a better time gaming. Unfortunately for us, the only store that's closed in our little remote area is the only two stores are the gaming related stores. My local game store for Warhammer closed a week ago, and the Source, our only electronics store, closed. So I have to have everything shipped in,
which is very difficult.
Yeah, it's worse than it used to be.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's about it, folks. I want you to do your best to take care of one another, stay healthy, stay safe.
Yeah. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. That's really about it.
That really is about it. Got anything else to say?
Bye-bye.
This has been 40K Stats Center, a presentation of the Frontline Gaming Podcast Network. Like what we do? Subscribe to and rate us on YouTube and wherever podcasts can be found. Join the conversation. Follow 40K Stats Center on Facebook. You can also support the show directly by joining the Chapter Tactics Patreon and competitive 40K in general via the ITC Patreon, or by grabbing a subscription to BCP.